Welcome to the ScienceFiction Rancher story. Here you find the best HFY story written by human. Listen the story. If you like it, subscribe the channel.
It's been about a week since the parasite took over your crewmate, however. Despite the inability to produce speech or move correctly, they're a nicer and more productive member of the crew than the person was. There are a lot of threats that you have to accept in your life when you're hired as a deep space caravan driver. It's a well-paid job, of course, and that's because of the threats. Deep space gravity EDs, those weird time-space gravity anomalies, parax away from anything else. Most of them have been mapped so that you can avoid them. But some of them are capable of moving, expanding, contracting, and if you ever get caught in one of them, well, you better be one hot-shot pilot or you're toast. And if it's an intelligent anomaly, that thing is going to be stuck in your mind for years. If you're lucky, there's a few ancient automated fleets between the stars, eternally fighting a war that was over millions of years ago, and to them your ship and cargo is forfeit most of the time. They do send you back to wherever you come from, but some of them need more. To them, you're just organic parts needed to keep the war going. Those are just the most common threats. There are reports of predatory rogue planets moving in the darkness between the stars, rumors of Kalian torment ships hunting for new forms of suffering, and they've got such sights to show whoever they happen to capture. Even hushed and worried talks of a thing, a creature so horrific that Lovecraft would have gladly sold his soul to use it in his mythos, imprisoned in an ancient place beyond all knowledge and time, a being that hungers for mortal races, that desires to turn all of creation into its own private playground where it might breed, feast, and destroy for eternity. But the worst threat, the biggest problem it has to be the ones that they don't talk about. Your partner. Oh, I know some people are couples, married travelers who journey across all of space, never settling down, raising children aboard their massive caravan ship. Some become great friends and enjoy a lifetime of companionship, but sometimes you get stuck with a major jerk, someone who is on this journey because they're a maladjusted and continent jerk who majored in Rudis at mean university with a minor in being generally unpleasant. I wasn't exactly the nicest person in the universe, sure, but I didn't take to this life aboard these massive supply ships because everyone in the universe found me unpleasant. I was and am a loner. The thought of life with very few people around me was pretty close to heaven, and after growing up on the Terran Ecumenopolis 14 billion people planet side alone, followed by studying xenom medicine on the tightly packed Centaur Diola Planetary University 23 1 billion people, mostly non-human, I needed a break from people and having to spend months with a small crew, sometimes only a single other person. That seemed to legitimately be a good way to live. Except in this case really makes me wish that the Galactic Teamsters Union and Interstellar Transportation Safety Commission would change the rules around and just allow single crew caravans. Already some people underneath their gruff and rude exteriors have a warm, soft, and genuinely lovable personality. Not this case. Holden is a Class A unpleasant jerk, and I have to wonder if the GTU hired me so that I'd somehow manage to kill him before we'd arrive. Started the day I met the guy. I smile, I offer him my hand and politely introduce myself immediately. Rather than shaking it, he makes a disparaging comment about my doctorate, blows me off for being an egghead, and Spends the entire job briefing goofing. Off on the first week of travel all I get are nasty comments. I really try to be nice, to be accommodating. I try making us real food, but he only wants reply junk. I try to just let him do his job, be professional, but he only barely does what he is supposed to, and often in a way that forces to take over his duties. I'm only the co-pilot and medical personnel. He's supposed to be the mechanic and the main pilot. I am not in any way or form trained for anything above emergency repairs, so after considering poisoning him for a few weeks, having to hear his unpleasant jokes that usually are radically uncomfortable for anyone born after the invention of space travel, and having to accept that he just isn't going to shower regularly. He changes. We had a small stopover at an emergency depot in deep space just to refill some parts, fuel tanks and medicine that were running low at the depot as a small side part of our mission to take tanks of plant and animal DNA needed for the Phase 3 terraforming of a joint human neural colony, a planet in the outer regions of the habitable zone. It'll be pretty cold there, and they need animals and plants from both our home worlds that can thrive in low temperatures. Mostly I unloaded the parts necessary at the depot. Standard stuff really. We could have finished it in half an hour and spent the next 48 hours relaxing, as we somehow were slightly ahead of schedule. But no, I have to spend hours setting up the fuel gauge alone because he was too busy checking out the entertainment, and I had to spend more hours getting him to unload the machine parts, because I don't exactly know which ones are supposed to go where we return to the ship, and I'm exhausted. I can't even go to bed or do a routine medical checkup on Holden since he took off his suit to use the depot's facilities, and per a protocol, after any such exposure to a place where there could potentially be unknown bacteria and such, there has to be a checkup, because Holden claims that there is an engineering problem in Bay 5 that he has to fix. I'm too tired to argue, so I just go to the bridge and begin the takeoff from the depot on my own. By the time I'm done with that, having the ship going FTL again, I'm so tired that I just lie back in the comfortable bridge chair and take a well-earned nap. By the time I'm awake again, I notice that there is a message from Holden, fearing it's something ghastly. Again, I don't check it out. He sent me things before that I'm definitely going to have to report to the GTU. Instead, I head down to the small onboard kitchen area and myself something to eat. I use the onboard resources to whip up a quick plate of the Peruvian dish sopa and enjoy some potatoes with a good spicy sauce and some eggs. That's when Holden comes into the kitchen. Unlike normal, he doesn't remark on the room's inherent suitability to what and who I am. I grunt an affirmation that I have acknowledged his existence. He doesn't speak, just grunts back. Instead, he just gets some nutrients and leaves. Possibly the best interaction I'd had with him up to that point. Over the next 3 days, that's when I notice things have changed. He doesn't do sloppy work that could put us in danger. Frankly, he's made the engines purr like I've never heard them do before. Like this wasn't a 30-year-old space hauler, but a fresh new star yacht. He doesn't make unpleasant and oft-times hurtful remarks about anything. He even seems to have learned that regular showers, even if they are the weird sonic showers we use aboard spaceships, are a key component of being basically decent. It isn't until we're both on the bridge, correcting our course slightly after We've received a report of a slowly roving black hole in the area that I notice it, and I really should have noticed it earlier because it is very obvious. I really got used to trying to ignore him, so I just didn't really see it before right that exact moment, but good stars, it's noticeable. The parasite, I mean Holden's veins are blue, his skin is cracked, and there is some kind of insectal thing burrowing into his skull. His movements are still very efficient, but somehow not particularly human. There is a wrongness to the way he moves, like the body is being operated by something that fundamentally is unaware of how a human being should move. Part of me is terrified, but another part, a more rational part, realized that if it wanted to harm me, it would have. For the past 3 days since leaving the depot, the opportunity has been there. I just nod at him it, and rather than trying to remove it or running away, I keep working with it until we're done with the course corrections. After that, I politely lead it to the medical room and not to remove it. And I think it's aware of that. I run a quick scan and determine that indeed Holden is still in there, but the creature is blocking his access to any functions he can still see and hear. All right, but he's been completely biohacked. The parasite itself is fascinating. I've studied xenom medicine, and as a part of it you have to learn a lot about xenobiology, and this thing is definitely adapted to long periods of survival in deep space. Very unusual. I observe it for the next few days, and it's a shocking change in behavior. It seems polite even if it can't seem to make the vocal cords work to communicate with it. It's helpful and works so very efficiently. It practically makes me seem to be a slacker in comparison. If it wasn't because I was also doing my work at the same time as I was observing it, I get DNA samples from it willingly donated once I politely explain what I intend to do, and it's completely as the scans showed, only with more details. It's not an animal nor a plant nor even a fungus. It's some kind of fascinating hybrid between all 3 traditional classifications of beings. Everything about this creature tells me that it is an artificially created being, a genetic masterpiece, if I do say so myself. It really isn't made for humans. That much is obvious, but it is brilliant at adapting to using Holden as a biomechanical vehicle, and it is even treating his body better than he used to. Once I explained the concept of off time when it was weirdly hovering over me as I was reading a book, it started to exercise and plan a surprisingly healthy diet with an unusual mix of plants and meals from across the known cosmos. Our journey would take months, and I had plenty of time to study this creature, and it had plenty of time to rebuild its current host. I have of course kept proper scientific records of my interactions with the creature, and have determined that it is more symbiotic in nature than parasitic. Though it does still take control over its host, it has certainly been nothing but beneficial to the host body. I tried to get it to use writing to talk with me, but it seems that while it can read, it has a difficulty in expressing itself using standard methods of communications. Instead, it used the holographic imaging machine to draw a 3D image of an impressive and seemingly completely organic spaceship, intricate and enormous, far bigger than even the biggest of Ark ships. It could serve as a small moon if it was stationed above a planet, having enough mass to affect tides. When it was done, the parasite zoomed in on a small area of the ship and simulated damage to its outer hull. To my surprise, the reaction of the ship was to let several Small insectal creatures quite similar to the parasite currently inhabiting Holden's skull scurry over the hull and do repair something odd however. Happened in a hologram as a sudden secondary damage to the ship occurred. Near the place where it had first been damaged some manner of projectile was shot into the hull of this organic titan. And a few of the insectal creatures were propelled into the coldness of space. I understood then what I was dealing with, some manner of maintenance droid, an organic machine that was meant to heal damages to the ship, to fix any deficiencies in the operation of its craft. It must have floated through space for eons before somehow getting to the depot, and when Holden unsuited it must have followed him all the way back onto the ship and fixed the current problem, making this ship the one taking DNA to the new colony. Inefficient, curious, so very curious. Enough to conquer any of my fears, any of my hesitation. I reached out my hand to the parasite. It recoiled at first but then looked at me and I nodded, not letting go of Holden. It reached out tendrils from its body that wrapped around my hand and began to attach. Slowly, not a pleasant sensation, not pleasant at all, but I felt like I had to do it. It was overwhelming at first. Millions of years of memories from before it was set adrift in deep space. Millions of years of being a component. Part of a greater thing, of being a small part of a greater whole, never understanding solitude, never being alone. Always on a great journey to see the stars, never truly dying, never truly being born, always a part of the ship. Being a part of its greater mind, and then an eternity of being alone, of being lost, of being useless, and then finally an organic host, small but usable, small but inefficient, something it could fix, something it could repair, something it could learn. It enjoyed fixing the ship, having fixed inorganic and working with a capable organic entity that it could respect. It didn't feel alone anymore. It saw me, saw everything I had experienced in my short life, willingly given without any constant conflict as it was having with Holden's brain. It understood why I was fond of being alone, but this way of being together, of being more than one being, was not like being alone in a crowd of millions. It was like being alone but together with someone who would understand. I offered it what it could only dream of in its lost little mind. It could see what I was thinking. Not a fight, not a conflict, not a fork takeover, but working together. I wanted to see the stars, not the many worlds crowded and filled with the shouts and screams. It wanted to go into the stars again, to be the ship it was once, a part of a ship that had been grown. It would take years, hundreds of them, but it could be done. It could repair the failing human flesh. I'd never grow old, never truly die, and together we could grow me into something beautiful, something wonderful, something so it would never have to be alone again, something so I would never have to deal with shitty partners again. Not just hoping that one day I could earn my own ship, fly my own ways, but truly becoming free. Becoming the ship. We came to that agreement, that understanding. I sedated Holden, and the creature let go of him. The feeling was incomprehensible, strange, and totally alien, yet it was also the greatest elation I'd ever had. I'd never connected with other humans, never felt a part of the civilization that I was born into. Always the outsider. Now I could feel this ancient thing. It wasn't fight me, I wasn't fighting it, and we were one. I let it into me, letting it combine with my flesh, my mind, my will. We carried Holden back to his quarters, and then we headed for the bridge again. We felt a joy unbridled, a sense of renewed eagerness that we had not felt in the short life And not in many years of the long life. Sitting by the bridge we could feel our body begin its long change. It would take centuries before we be ready to take to the stars, but for now we knew that traveling aboard these metal ships will be just fine.